This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. When you visit the doctor, you probably hand over your insurance, your ID, and contact details. It's just one of the many places that has your personal info. And if any of them accidentally expose it, you could be at risk for identity theft. LifeLock monitors millions of data points a second. If you become a victim, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year at lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Saturday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Saturday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Saturday. Saturday, bring it on.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the individuals participating in the show. All persons described or mentioned in the podcast should be considered innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. This podcast contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions along with adult language, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. A 23-year-old young lady has decided to put her life back on track. She's moved back closer to family, just 20 minutes from her hometown of Tyler, Texas. She has re-enrolled in college, has a new spark to get her life on track, and has just gotten a new job. One last night to have some fun and let her hair down would be a night her family has nightmares about. You're listening to the Mysterious Brews podcast, and tonight we bring you the case of Brandi Wells.
Years. A child was born on the night that Brandi disappeared, and that child will graduate this next year. That's how long she's been gone.
18 years since this East Texas woman last saw her daughter. While many families will be focused on what they are thankful for this holiday, this Tyler mother will be spending another Thanksgiving wondering where her child is. KETK's Annabelle Tuggle has her urgent plea for answers in a case that has gone cold, and her hope that her daughter may still be alive.
And that life is just not the same without you in it.
Thanksgiving used to be one of Ellen Tant's favorite holidays, a day to not only eat lots of food, but also celebrate her daughter Brandi's birthday.
I never got to see you grow into the woman that I know you would become.
But it will be yet another Thanksgiving without...
Welcome to a deep, dark, dank, moist basement somewhere in the bowels of Georgia. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you live in the South, Mother Nature said, told you was going to pay for those nice days. And this past week, the heat index in North Georgia has been 104 to 108. And below the gnat line in South Georgia, Satan's ass crack. Yes, it's been that hot. Hopefully where you're at, it's starting to cool off. Here, it's just ratcheting up. The humidity is awful. School is probably in full swing for most everyone in the South. I know our northern brethren doesn't start until after Labor Day, you lucky turds. But we are knee deep in it down here in the great state of Georgia. So we did get a little feedback on the old Van Meter visitor. So we got some people were really impressed about how great our stuff is in our day job. So we can always have an education corner. You know, we could talk for days about it. Miss Helena said that Coach needs to behave himself or the neighbor might just storm Coach's wedding when the moment arrives, Shrek style. And yes, Miss Winford and myself found that hilarious, I tell you. Now, there is some, I don't know if we talked about it last week or not. There is DNA testing about to be done on the West Memphis 3, so we're going to try to keep y'all abreast of that as soon as we find something out. Rebecca Gould's case, if you are not following our good friend Jennifer Buchholz's page on Rebecca's case, there was a new interview with the confessed killer's little brother on Diamond State Murder. I believe is where that you can find that one. I think it's one episode, maybe two. So you can keep up with that. There's still some shenanigans going on there in that case, even after we have a conviction. So lots of things going on. Hopefully we get everybody back together. With school starting back, schedules are crazy. So as you could tell from the opening, you got just me tonight. The soft, silky sounds. We have no new on the Patreon front. We are getting some great emails about some cases. And tonight's episode is actually a listener request. This comes from the great state of Texas. And that is, what happened to Brandi Wells? Brandi Ellen Wells was born on November 28th, 1982. She was raised by her mother, Ellen Tant, and has an older brother named Christopher and a younger sister named Georgia. Now, Tyler, Texas is the county seat of Smith County, which is located in central East Texas. And when Brandi was growing up, I think the population was just over 70,000. Today, it's closer to over 113,000. Now, Tyler is located about 100 miles southeast of Dallas. And Brandi had a fairly normal childhood in a blue-collar family. She was described as having a beaming personality. And friends and family explained that Brandi had a real zest for life and an innocent quality that made her stand out. Brandi was extremely outgoing and loved to talk to people. Her social impulse was incredibly strong, and it's been insinuated that she found a comfort and joy in sharing her time with others. Now, Brandi's mother described her as a voracious reader, frequently seen with her nose in a book. While she loved literature, early on in life, two things were near and dear to her heart. The first was Brandi felt a close connection to religion and would dedicate a great deal of her free time to attending services and participating in youth group activities. Her and her best friend, Janelle Medkiff, would spend a lot of their teenage years at Bethel Baptist Church, attending the church's summer camp program and participating in the community outreach program. Now, Janelle stated that she and Brandi were the closest of friends, spending every single day together. The strength of their friendship would continue throughout Brandi's adult life, and their bond was unbreakable. Janelle has often referred to Brandi as more like her sister than her friend. Their time together at church played a role in solidifying their friendship, and to Janelle and everyone else that knew Brandi, Brandi's love for the church was obvious. Her faith was strong, and her belief in God was an incredibly deep part of her life. It was through her faith that Brandi felt a calling to help others and to contribute to her community. Now, the second thing that was near and dear to her heart was Brandi's love of music. And at a very young age, and it's been described as 5th or 6th grade, Brandi began playing the flute in the school band. Now, like a lot of teenagers, Brandi had to get braces in middle school and felt that the combination of braces and playing the flute was very challenging. Undeterred by this challenge, people around her stated that Brandi's ability to play the flute was never in question and possibly got stronger. And it became apparent that Brandi's determination and work ethic would not only allow her to persevere through having braces and playing the flute, but it would not allow anything to ever stand in her way when it came to achieving the things she desired. In addition to playing the flute, Brandi would become very active in singing at both church and school. Now, according to Janelle, Brandi dreamed about making it big in the world of music. She would often state, quote, "She loved to sing. It was always kind of a dream of hers to be a country singer," end quote. Brandi would also dabble in trying to write her own music, and her love of music was always an aspect of her personality and was very apparent to anyone who spent more than 5 minutes with her. Now, Brandi's sense of helping her community also ignited a passion for education. According to Ellen, her mother, Brandi's maternal grandmother, so Ellen's mother, had been a kindergarten teacher, and Brandi wanted to teach kindergarten one day. So while Brandi was attending a Chapel Hill High School, she took part in a mentors program. And it was through this program that her and her fellow classmates would help children with their reading or math or reading comprehension. And Brandi felt a sense of pride and belonging in helping these children, and it was clear to those around her that helping children seemed to light her life up in a way that only a few things had before. So Brandi's high school life was full when it came to her plate, and she loved everything that was on that plate. Outside of her everyday classes, she was still very active in her church. She participated in the school band as well as the school chorus, and she also found time to participate in the flag corps or the color guard. Now, Brandi's mother, Ellen, stated, quote, "I think she felt she just had to stand out a little bit more and always put herself into doing things that were grand. It wasn't enough that she was in the band. She had to be in the flag corps also," end quote. Brandi's determination shined through to those that knew her best. She wasn't going to allow anything to stand in the way of her goals. Ellen stated that Brandi would participate and practice her flag corps routine for hours a day, and whenever she had a free moment, she would be outside working on that routine. Now, Brandi not only became a member of the flag corps, but she also became one of the corps' star performers. And through her hard work and determination, coupled with her intelligence and her skills, some doors for her future began to open. As high school came to an end, Brandi's hard work had paid off, and she had earned a scholarship after graduating from Chapel Hill in 2001. Brandi went on to college after graduation and decided to live on campus. Now, her mother would drive out on weekends to pick her up and bring her home, where Brandi would spend time with her friends. As Brandi made the transition into adulthood, her life became more private. While she spent time with her family, her independence began to shine through. Brandi was focused on living her life the way she saw fit, and she wasn't the type to call home a lot to discuss her daily activities, and that's hard for a parent. She would share vague descriptions of her plans and goals with her family, who were extremely proud of Brandi. Ellen would recall driving Brandi to college for the tryout for the Flag Corps scholarship. She states that in the days and weeks leading up to the tryout, Brandi had practiced hard to make sure she nailed every aspect of her routine. She had been nervous, but in true Brandi fashion, she crushed the tryout and was extremely happy to have proven herself on a grander stage. So Brandi would attend Trinity Valley Community College for 2 years. During this time, she was working towards a degree in education with the hopes of becoming a teacher. While in college, Brandi met and fell in love with a man whom she would later marry. And Ellen would state that she had hoped Brandi would finish school before getting married, but understood that love sometimes does not wait. Not long after becoming married, Brandi moved with her husband to Dallas, which is about 100 miles away from her family in Tyler. It was during this time that, as most newlyweds do, her and her husband began to feel the financial struggles of a new couple. While Brandi wanted to finish her degree, she simply could not afford to do so. So she withdrew from school and got a full-time job to help lessen the pinch of the bills of the household. Unfortunately, Brandi's marriage would not survive this financial strain, and after 2 years of marriage, the couple decided to amicably part ways. Brandi would ultimately move in with a friend after the divorce. Now, it was during this transitional period that Brandi found herself living in San Antonio, And that's about 500 miles southwest of her family in Tyler. Now, she had moved in with a male friend, and this relationship blossomed into the two dating. Her boyfriend would eventually join the military and was quickly deployed overseas. After he left town, Brandi once again was on the move. She would stay with several friends and acquaintances, and even with her ex-husband's sister, her ex-sister-in-law, for a short period. It was during this period of her life where Brandi seemed, for the first time, to be a little lost. And Ellen would later say that while in San Antonio, Brandi decided to put a little more energy and focus into her passion for music. But not having the means to dedicate her entire focus on music, she eventually left San Antonio. Now, this move would get her into an apartment with a roommate in Brownsboro, just 20 miles from Tyler. Her family hadn't seen a lot of her in the 4 years since she had moved away to college. And by moving to Brownsboro, this would allow her to be near her hometown, reigniting her dreams, and Brandi was more determined than ever to put her life back on track. So in the summer of 2006, Brandi, now 23 years old, reached out to the band director at Trinity Valley, and that's where she had originally gotten the scholarship. Now, she had been out of school for 2 years and was not sure if she would be able to use the remainder of her previous scholarship. Now, the band director informed Brandi that she would need to try out once again, and based on this tryout, her scholarship would or would not be reinstated. Brandi had not been active in the Flag Corps for quite some time, and so she immediately began practicing. And to add even more pressure, she would now be competing against ladies several years younger than her. Ellen would say, quote, "She was kind of looking forward to meeting the new band members, but also a little scared of meeting them. Her being so much older than the others, she was a little anxious about that. Hoping that she could just do as good a job on the Flag Corps as she did the previous years," end quote. Once again, Brandi's work ethic and determination propelled her to make the squad, and her scholarship was reinstated. So on July 29th, 2006, Brandi called her best friend Janelle to tell her the good news. Janelle would later say, quote, "She could not stop talking about getting ready to get back in school because I know that she had missed that, and that's really where she was wanting to be," end quote. In addition to returning to school, Brandi had also began looking for a job. She had applied at the local Walmart where she had previously worked and got the position. She was told that she would be added to the schedule for a future start date. Everything seemed to be falling into place for Brandi. She was going back to school, she had secured a job, and her living arrangements with her roommate were going well. Ellen was happy to see Brandi putting her life back together, and while she may have faced a small setback, she knew that her daughter could still achieve all that she had dreamed of. With Brandi living in Brownsboro, there would be a better chance for her to spend time with her family. Ellen had hoped the two would renew their relationship and become even closer. On Wednesday, August the 2nd, 2006, Brandi surprised Ellen when she came walking into her apartment. Elated to see her daughter, Ellen asked Brandi what she was doing there. Brandi explained that she had come to spend some time with her. Now, according to Ellen, shortly after arriving, Brandi walked down the hall to her little sister's room. Georgia was a junior in high school, and she hadn't seen Brandi in probably, the way it was reported, I think she had seen her maybe 2 or 3 times the previous year, and maybe 4 or 5 times in the previous 2 years. So they had some catching up to do. After visiting with Georgia in her room, Brandi came back out into the living room. She had changed her clothes and was wearing a cream-colored tube top, rust-colored gaucho pants, and some black strapless high-heeled sandals. And you may be thinking, how in the heck can you be so specific in what she was wearing? Well, we'll get to that, a little foreshadowing, if you will. So with her little outfit on, she did a little spin and asked her mom how she looked. Ellen told her that she looked very cute. And Ellen would recount how Brandi, as a child, was constantly changing her clothes and pursuing different looks. But on this particular night, this moment shared between the two would forever be burned into Ellen's memory. Again, A little foreshadowing, if you will. Brandi put her makeup bag down on the coffee table and told Ellen she was planning to go out to a club. Now, she had a little time before she started back to school and to work, and since all of her free time would be taken up doing her job and with schoolwork, she wanted to live a little bit before the grind started. According to Ellen, Brandi explained that she was going to meet up with some friends that evening, and she even asked Georgia if she wanted to go out with her. Georgia was not feeling well and declined. Now, the local scene, like many across the country, saw Wednesday nights as ladies' nights, and a lot of bars and clubs let the women folk in with a valid ID for free. Brandi figured it was a good opportunity to have a little fun without breaking the bank. Money was tight so much that she had asked Ellen if she could borrow some money for gas. Ellen explained that she didn't have any extra cash and she didn't get paid until the next day, so she was barking up the wrong tree. Brandi then requested to borrow her car, explaining that her car was low on gas. Ellen said, "Join the club, sweetheart. My car is on fumes too, and I only have enough gas to get me to work and the gas station on payday." Jokingly, Brandi then asked if Ellen's husband, Brandi's stepfather, had any extra cash laying around. Ellen told her that he didn't get paid until Friday. Now, this was Wednesday, so there's nobody in that house got any extra spending money. Now, side note, I could not find any information on Brandi's biological father, but Ellen's husband has been described as being the closest thing to a father that Brandi had. And this man raised her as his own, referred to her as his daughter, and Brandi referred to him as her father. However, I don't have a name for him. So back to our regularly scheduled programming. So at this time, Brandi decided she was going to head out. Ellen was under the impression that Brandi would be meeting up with friends, even though she was unsure of who those friends were. She had assumed Brandi was referring to people she had gone to school with who were still living in the area. Point of reference here, Brandi never specifically stated who the friends were or what club or bar she was going to. Ellen, again, was under the impression that it was the local club in Tyler known as the Electric Cowboy, a place that Brandi had frequently been to. Brandi was actually not going to Electric Cowboy. Her plan was to drive 45 minutes east of Tyler to Longview, Texas. Brandi gives her mom a hug and a kiss on the cheek and walks out the apartment. And this was approximately 8 p.m. Now, unfortunately, this would be the last time any of Brandi's family would ever see her again. But it would not be the last time that she was seen that night. So, Brandi's first stop headed to Longview was not a club, but it was a nearby bowling alley which had a bar in the back. Y'all do things a little different in Texas. I wish we had a bar in the bowling alley where I was at. So when Brandi entered, she was met by Jeanette Green. And Jeanette is a friend of her mother's, Ellen, who knows Brandi's family well. Now, according to Jeanette, when Brandi entered, she immediately recognized her, and Brandi sat down on a bar stool and began chatting her up. Brandi states that her mother, the way it's explained, and there's a Disappeared episode, the way it goes down is Brandi sits down at the bar stool. Jeanette goes, "Hey, baby, how you doing? You know, what you been up to?" And they can't, a little small talk. And then Brandi tells Jeanette that her mother, Ellen, had said it was all right for her to get a drink on Ellen's tab. And according to Jeanette, Brandi didn't appear to be nervous or uncomfortable and just stated, quote, she would drink a cherry vodka sour. She was very nonchalant. She just sat back and popped herself up on the bar stool and would drink her drink and twirl her hair a little bit, end quote. Jeanette said the two caught up a little, and when asked where Brandi was headed that evening and what her plans were, she told her that she was going to Graham Central Station, a club in Longview. Upon hearing this, Jeanette tried to dissuade her from going to Longview because it has some rough areas, is 45 minutes away, and also being a bartender, Jeanette has seen attractive women at bars getting into bad situations with men when they go alone. Brandi, however, was determined to go to Longview and explained to Jeanette that she'd be fine and she knew how to take care of herself. Jeanette was more than your average cautious bartender, however. She had a personal experience which pushed her to warn Brandi yet again. Nearly 20 years earlier, in Tyler, Texas, on Saturday, March 18th, 1988, Glenda Frances Moorhead went to her job as the head waitress at El Charro's at 10:15 a.m. She had been working there for nearly 18 years, and everyone knew the polite and sweet waitress. Glenda's shift ended at 5 p.m., but she decided to stick around after her hours and play some of the business's coin-operated games. She would eventually leave and then arrive at her home, where she would catch up with one of her sons that was staying with her at the time. She asked him what his plans were for the evening and then explained that she was going to the local bar Proud Mary's to play some pool and dance. So Glenda gets to Proud Mary's and spends some time talking, dancing, and playing some games. Now, it was later determined that Glenda exited Proud Mary's between 10:30 and 11:30 p.m. that evening. She walked around the left side of the building towards the back parking lot where her blue and white 1972 Chevrolet was parked. Glenda was never seen again. When authorities located Glenda's car, they found her purse, her ID, coat, and wallet in the front seat. $2 had been pulled out, which Glenda's daughter would state was likely to buy a pack of cigarettes, and that she did that often. Now, the keys were still in the ignition and the headlights were left on. The driver's side window was down approximately 2 inches, and investigators found one of Glenda's shoes and a trail of blood, but nothing else. Glenda has never been seen or found and was declared legally dead in 1999. Her children still wonder what happened to their mother and if they'll ever find any answers. And the reason I tell you that story is because Jeanette was Glenda's best friend. And Jeanette recounted the story to Brandi. But Brandi once again dismissed the idea that anything would happen to her like that, which kind of pissed Jeanette off. And again, in that Disappeared episode, you can tell Jeanette was not happy. And she would later state, quote, annoyed by Brandi's cavalier attitude about it, there wasn't much I could do, end quote. Having only drank about half of her drink, Brandi stood up from the bar stool, walked around to the side of the bar, and hugged Jeanette. Jeanette once again gave her a final warning to be careful, watch out for herself, and not to drive as she had been drinking. Brandi smiled and told her not to worry and walked out of the bowling alley. Now, while the specific time that Brandi left the bowling alley is not known, based on other events of the evening, it has been narrowed down to between 8:30 and 9:30 p.m. Now, the drive from Tyler to Longview would take Brandi down I-20, and it's 4 lanes, 2 east, 2 west, but it runs through a very desolate area. And side note, we have I-20 running through this state, and damn if it don't go through some desolate areas in this state. Now, in Texas, between Tyler and Longview, most of the desolate places are oil fields, and they're dotted with a little truck stop here and there along the way. But there's nothing that would have a lot of people or resources if you needed some assistance mechanically. Graham Central Station was a club located at 1016 McKenna Road in Longview, Texas. Now, Longview is similar in size and population to Tyler, but that's about all the similarities that these two towns possess. Now, some have argued that Longview has a higher crime rate than Tyler, but statistics show that the two are nearly even in terms of their crime rate, with both displaying a 10 rating on the crime index, with 100 being the safest. Or safest, not safest. Good Lord. Now, we know that Brandi was familiar with Tyler and knew a lot of people in the town. We really do not have any information about whether or not she knew anyone in Longview or if she had been there before. And the further we get in the story, she probably hadn't. Now, phone records show that while driving to the club, Brandi actually called there twice asking for directions. Now, this is indicative of someone not familiar with the area. No one knows exactly why Brandi, low on gas and money, chose to make the 45-minute drive one way to this club rather than go to the one closer to home. The Electric Cowboy in Tyler was just a few miles from her mother's apartment. Grand Central Station had a driver's license reader/swiper to verify the age of people entering the bar. And according to their records, Brandi's license was swiped by her at 10:44 p.m. According to witnesses at the club, Brandi entered alone, stuck mostly to herself. She did strike up a couple of conversations with a few people, several of which indicated that Brandi had mentioned she was low on gas and wasn't sure she'd be able to make the drive home. It has been suggested that Brandi either directly asked for or beat around the bush to multiple people that she needed a few dollars for gas. What we do not know is if anyone offered to help her out. Brandi leaves the club, and what happens over the next few hours has baffled investigators, friends, and family for years. So the next morning, Thursday, August 3rd, 2006, a trooper with the Texas Department of Public Safety, which is Texas's version of the state police, was driving down I-20 at approximately 9:15 a.m. when he noticed what appeared to be an abandoned vehicle on the westbound side of the road. The vehicle was a black 2000 Pontiac Grand Prix. The trooper approaches the vehicle and sees no signs of an accident, but what is strange is that the driver's side door is partially open, and the vehicle does not appear to have been purposely pulled to the side of the road. It appears to the trooper that it may have drifted off the road and came to stop in the weeds at an odd angle. The trooper runs the plate to check if the vehicle is stolen, but the check comes back clear. So he approaches the car and places a sticker on the window denoting it is abandoned, and gets back in his patrol car and continues his patrol route. That same morning, about 15 minutes after the trooper sees this car, Ellen wakes up in her apartment, begins her morning routine, and as she enters the living room, she's surprised to see that Brandi's makeup bag is still on the coffee table, but Brandi is not there. Being that it's only a 2-bedroom apartment, Brandi would have slept on the couch if she had returned that night. But Ellen sees nothing inside her apartment to indicate that Brandi has come home. At first, she doesn't think much of it. Brandi's 23 years old, and she's been taking care of herself for quite some time now. Ellen thinks that it's likely that Brandi decided to spend the night at a friend's house, but keep in mind, Ellen is still under the assumption that Brandi went to the club in Tyler, not a club all the way in Longview. So Ellen heads off to work as normal without thinking too much about anything else. Brandi was not in the habit of calling her mom to let her know her plan, so Ellen has no reason to assume there is anything going on or if there is any fuckery afoot. Which there is. I'm just going to let you know. There's a lot of it. So later that day, things begin to become a little bit more suspicious. And it was towards early evening that Ellen received a phone call from Brandi's roommate. Now, according to him, Brandi was supposed to be home that afternoon, but he's not seen her. And he cannot get in touch with her. Ellen explains that Brandi didn't come home to her house the night before. It's beginning to... Spidey senses are starting to tingle and beginning to become a little concerned. Ellen gets off the phone and starts calling Brandi's cell. But the calls go straight to voicemail, which is highly unusual for Brandi because Ellen stated that she never turned her cell phone off. Ellen tries to calm herself by saying that there is the possibility that if Brandi did spend the night with a friend, she may or may not have had her charger with her. Ellen would state in an interview, quote, "You don't think she's disappeared. You just think that she's 23 years old and she will come home when she's ready. So at the time, the warning bells still were not going off loudly in my head, end quote. While Ellen is concerned, she is trying to keep a level head. So she continues making periodic phone calls to Brandi's phone, but the calls go straight to voicemail. So Ellen goes to bed, and when she wakes up on Friday, August the 4th, full-blown panic has set in. She calls Brandi's godmother, Michelle, and tells Michelle that Brandi has not come home and no one has seen her since she left her apartment on Wednesday night. Michelle also begins calling Brandi's phone, and both ladies are leaving numerous voicemails, which result in the phone's mailbox being filled and no longer accepting new messages. That morning, Ellen called the Tyler Police Department and filed a missing persons report. Officers were dispatched to Ellen's apartment to take the report, and while conducting the interview process, while they were there asking what Brandi's plans were for the evening she left, Ellen learns for the first time where Brandi had actually went. As Ellen's telling the police that Brandi was going to the Electric Cowboy, her younger daughter, Georgia, walks in the room behind her and interrupts her and says, "No, Mama. Actually, she was going to Graham Central Station in Longview." Ellen is not happy and later stated, quote, "I was pretty mad. I didn't feel that Brandi had lied to me, but I felt she had kept some important information from me," end quote. For investigators, there was nothing about the report which immediately caused them to be alarmed. At least once a week, they state that they would get a report of a young adult not coming home from a bar, and in almost all the cases, the person would resurface. And we're walking this fine line right here. While she is 23 years old and she is living somewhere else, she went missing on Wednesday evening. No one has heard from her for almost 48 hours. And that's the Goldilocks time. So them not finding anything strange, I understand that, and I see their side of it where they just don't have a whole lot of information. Okay, she didn't come home from a bar. She's 23 years old. She could be staying with friends, and she's just not called anybody. The parent side of it is, look, this is not like my daughter. We're approaching 48 hours, and no one has seen her. And I'm just now finding out that not only did she go to a club by herself, she went to a club 45 minutes away in another town. So after filing the missing persons report, Ellen makes the choice to stay home by the phone just in case the police or Brandi try to call. Michelle, however, her godmother, decides that she's getting in her car and she's driving to Longview. And she's looking for the club. She wants to assess the situation at the club, boots on the ground. She also wants to see if Brandi's car or any other sign of Brandi being there was actually at the club. When Michelle arrives at the club, of course, she finds that it's closed and the parking lot's empty. Panic sets in and she starts walking around the club and notices a little wooded area directly behind the building. She enters said woods and begins calling out Brandi's name. As she is searching, she finds a little ravine and climbs down into it, but she doesn't find anything in there. And for the next 2 days, Brandi's family moves from panic to full-on freakout. Ellen calls the Tyler police for updates, but they don't have any new information. So the family mobilizes and they begin printing up missing persons flyers that have a picture of Brandi and all of her vital statistics on them. So on Sunday, August the 6th, 2006, Ellen calls the Tyler Police Department hoping for an update, but she is informed that since Brandi had actually went missing at Graham Central Station, they are turning the case over to the Longview Police Department. They also tell Ellen that unfortunately she will have to fill out another missing persons report with the Longview PD. Sergeant Darren Lair is assigned the case and at first doesn't have a great deal of concern. He would state, quote, "On its surface, the report itself appeared to be fairly generic, and we get them pretty regularly. Daughter came to Longview, was going to a nightclub, hasn't come home yet. Nothing's jumping out as there's a problem here," end quote. Within the next 2 days, the Longview Police Department receives a call about an abandoned car, the same car that we talked about earlier that the trooper had previously tagged as abandoned. On Thursday morning, the caller states that the car has been there for days and it looks strange. They might want to come and take a look at it. This time, when a different trooper arrives on the scene, he runs the plate. And this time, there's a hit. A missing persons report for Brandi Wells is attached to that plate. The abandoned car is, in fact, Brandi's. The car had been sitting on the side of the road for 6 days while she has been missing, and no one had previously made the connection because she was not reported missing at the time the original trooper ran the plates. So the police are behind the 8 ball from the get-go, and there's been a lot of shade thrown at the police in this situation. And like I said earlier, there's a fine line there. They don't know what they don't know. They didn't know the car belonged to a young lady that lived 45 minutes away that was missing. The two had not been connected at the time. I don't know if, and I'm not victim blaming at all, I don't know if in taking the report, if they asked Ellen what she was driving, license plate, or anything like that. I feel like they would have, but I'm not 100% sure. You would think they would have, and then they would have run that to see if there had been an abandoned car like that. So it wouldn't have been 6 days. So there's the balls dropped. I just don't think there's any malicious intent like cover up. Now, later on, and if you read updates on this case, the family have turned a 180 and do not feel like the police did very much to help them. I mean, we'll get into some of that later, but I kind of, like I said, we're on a fine razor edge right there. And y'all know on this show, we will flat out point out some police negligence in a heartbeat. I just don't feel like there's any malicious intent behind any of what's going on in this case. So on Tuesday, August the 8th, 2006, the Longview Police Department notifies Ellen that they've located Brandi's car. Multiple investigators arrive on the scene and they begin to examine the vehicle and the surrounding area. The crime scene unit goes through Brandi's car looking for evidence, and they dust for fingerprints as well as check for fibers and any signs of foul play. Now, Sergeant Lair later states, quote, "We're looking for hair lifts, fiber lifts, latent prints, fluid. Is there anything in the car that lets us know what was going on in that car when it stopped?" End quote. Now, according to police reports, there are no signs of a struggle within the vehicle, though there are several items and details which appear to be strange. Brandi's purse was in the back seat along with her wallet. There was no money, and Brandi didn't have any credit cards. Her ID was in her wallet. Now, there are conflicting reports that state it was either found on the floorboard or in the console near the gear shift, this being her wallet. Police also locate a cell phone, and behind the back seat sitting on the floor, and this has also been reported as sitting on the floor behind the back seat, is a red 1-gallon gas can. Other reports say that the gas can was found in the trunk. Now, Brandi's keys were not in the vehicle when it was found, according to Ellen. Now, this is confirmed by Brandi's roommate as well. The gas can is a strange detail because Brandi wasn't known to have owned one, and according to Ellen, she wasn't much of a planner. More than likely, she wouldn't have had the forethought to have a gas can in her car in case she ran out of gas. Police did state that they were unable to determine whether or not gas had been in the can, which is odd because anyone who has ever used a fucking gas can knows if gas has been in the damn thing. Because the car would have reeked of gas, especially on the side of the road for 6 days. But anyway, in addition to all that, while attempting to dust for prints, they determine another oddity. They can't detect any prints on the gas can or in the car. Police also found a napkin in the car with a name and a phone number on it. And upon closer examination, they determined that the driver's seat is not in the right setting. It had been slid all the way to the back, implying someone tall had been in that driver's seat. Keep in mind, Brandi is only 5 feet tall on a good day. She has been reported as 4'11". And according to investigators, there's no way on God's green earth she would have been able to reach the pedals from the position they found the seat in. Authorities also find a partial thumbprint on the driver's side window, and that's it. To this day, that print has never been matched to anyone. And like I said earlier, minus that lone partial thumbprint, there's no other prints found in that car, which makes some people wonder if it had been wiped down. And by some people, I mean those not paying attention. Yes, if you only find one partial, yeah, it's been wiped down. Unfortunately, all of these strange details add up to something suspicious, but investigators also have to keep in mind that the car had been sitting there for nearly a week, unlocked, and anyone could have come along and messed with it, contaminating the crime scene. But on the flip side, there's only a partial thumbprint in there. Authorities also find no evidence in the vehicle to suggest that anyone had tried to tamper with said vehicle or steal the car. The sum of all of this is that things just are not adding up. Bad thing is, authorities are playing catch up. Brandi's been missing for 6 days, and her car has been on the side of I-20 the entire time. Now, it should be noted, Brandi's vehicle had been located in the westbound lane as though she were heading back toward Tyler. But the car's actually found on a stretch of I-20 that is approaching Longview from Shreveport. Meaning that it wasn't as if Brandi got on the interstate from the club in Longview and began to head back west to Tyler, but rather she had appeared, or the car has appeared, that it has driven further east towards Shreveport and made a turn and was heading back to Longview. So either the driver had gotten lost and was headed towards Shreveport before they realized it, turned around and was heading west back towards Longview, which would take them back to Tyler eventually. Police indicated that the vehicle had been found a few miles away from the exit that Brandi would have likely taken to head back to Tyler. If she was low on gas, as everyone believes, getting lost on the way to the club and on the way home may have caused her to need assistance. Remember, she called the club twice to find out where it was located.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Now, a debate started growing, catching legs, about whether or not Brandi is in fact the person who parked her car in the spot it was found. Police have never stated publicly whether or not the vehicle had run out of gas, leading it to be left where it was found. When authorities prepared to move the car, they contacted a local dealership to make a key. Each time they started the ignition, it would run for a few seconds and then it would stop. Gas was put into the car under the assumption that the failure for the engine to continue to run was indeed there was no gas in it. But it didn't solve the problem. Days later, the vehicle was turned over to Ellen, who had the car towed to a local repair shop. The mechanic told Ellen that the reason the car wouldn't stay running was not due to fuel, but because of an anti-theft device. Brandi's car would only run if the ignition key had a special chip inside of it. When the dealership had made the key, they did not include said chip, and so the vehicle turning off was a result of a key starting said vehicle with no chip. Once a key with a chip was used, the car started fine and it had no issues. Now, we are going to pause right there because this is a 20-pager, boys and girls, on my notes. We're about halfway through it. We are about to get into the investigation, the search for Brandi, and the theories. So I wanted to pause there. Patreon members, you will get part 2 very early. because I am going to record part 2 tomorrow, but you non-paying folk will have to wait a week. For recommendations, we have a listener recommendation. I'm sure that was loud as hell. Where's it at? Yes. The username known as Matt said, if you're looking for any recommendations, I have just watched a YouTube History Channel piece called 13 Bigfoot Sightings You Have to See to Believe. The proof is out there. And it has a narrator and a panel of quote-unquote experts who review Bigfoot videos and evidence. And it was pretty well done, according to Matt. So our Bigfoot aficionados, please check that out on the YouTubes. Miss Winningham is the listener that recommended Brandi's case, and I was going to get into this in part 2, but I'll go ahead and leave you this. If you want to skip ahead, the show Disappeared that I talked about, this was their first ever episode. Season 1, episode 1, The End of Innocence, covers Brandi's case. So you can put some names with some faces. But anyway, boys and girls, like I said, stay tuned next week for part 2. This is a doozy. It's just a lot of information to cover, and I just didn't feel like y'all listening to me drone on and on and on and on was good for your health or mine. But, like they say in old Mexico, deuces.